Hi guys, how's it going? Brian from Boas here. For many morph boas, there is a corresponding locality boa with a similar overall appearance. Today I'm going to show you some morph boas and their corresponding locality boa twin. If you find this video helpful, or you just like to look at beautiful snakes, I'd really appreciate if you would subscribe to the Brian Boas YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming boa videos. So it seems like most of the people that are into boas are either into the morph boas or the locality boas, and typically people aren't into both of them. But I think there's definitely a lot of pros to both the morph and the locality boas, and I've even done videos entitled The Pros and Cons of Morph Boas and the Pros and Cons of Locality Boas, so be sure to check out those videos if you haven't watched them already. There are definitely some locality boas that appear to have a similar overall appearance and a possibly even similar genetic and even biochemical basis for the appearance as what we're seeing in morph boas. And I don't want to imply that the exact same thing is going on. Unfortunately, there have been relatively few molecular genetic or biochemical studies on boa morphs to figure out exactly what is causing the different appearance. But it's always tempting to speculate that something similar might be going on. And I also in no way am endorsing any kind of hybridization of, it's okay to breed this morph with this locality. As I've said many times before, it's very important to keep the locality boas pure, so don't, misinterpret what I'm saying in this video. So now I thought it'd be cool to just take out some of my morph boas and show you the corresponding locality boa. The first morph gene with a corresponding locality boa is the Hypo gene. And that, of course, is the Hypomelanistic gene. And that refers to the main effect of this gene is a reduced amount of the melanin or the dark pigment. So the boas have an overall lighter appearance. Hypo is also known as salmon or orange tail hypo. The other main effect of this gene is that the shape of the saddles is different. So you can see the saddle is reduced in size and the shape is more of a bow tie-like shape rather than the standard saddle shape. This particular animal is actually a Hypomelanism boa. I don't have a straight Hypo boa, but this animal, the Melanin gene, gives it kind of a more pastel coloration, but the light color and the shape of the saddles is due to the Hypo gene. Unfortunately, this animal is in shed right now, so her colors are a little bit dull. This is a very colorful boa. Both the Melanin and the Hypo gene really enhance the color. Hypo gene is a very common gene. It's been around for quite a while, a few decades, and it's very often combined with other genes to enhance the effect. So it just enhances the color saturation, and it will clean up the pattern. For example, if you have an albino boa, if you breed the Hypo gene in, you get a sunglow boa, which has greatly improved color saturation and much brighter colors compared to a straight albino. So Hypo boa or Hypo gene is a very versatile gene that's in the almost all boa breeders will have Hypo in their collection, in either by itself or in combination. The corresponding locality boa to the Hypo boa is the Hog Island Boa. The Hog Island Boa is a naturally occurring hypomelanistic boa with a reduced amount of black pigment. And you can see how beautiful these animals are. They have a lot of pink and orange and even some greenish overtones to their scales. Just one of my favorite locality boas. Very beautiful animals indeed. Although the Hog Island Boas have a reduced amount of black pigment, they still retain quite a bit of it, and they often have these beautiful speckles both on the back as well as you can see on the belly. And many breeders have selectively bred them for a cleaner look, and they try to reduce the amount of the speckles. Personally, I like the wild look better, and I like the animals that have the speckling. Another thing that people have done with these animals is, unfortunately, they've crossed them with Hypo common boas of indefinite locality. And by doing so, they create a cross called a Hypo hog. And then they might breed these again to more Hypos or more hogs, and they come up with a boa called a sunset boa, which has this bright orange coloration. Unfortunately, when you cross the Hog Island Boas, they're no longer pure, and you can't really represent them as Hog Island Boas. And then there's also the risk that some of these boas will be passed off as pure Hog Island Boas to an unsuspecting boa buyer. So I highly recommend not breeding Hog Island Boas to the regular Hypo Boas. The second morph gene with a corresponding locality boa is one that I recently added to my collection, and I'm very excited about the future possibilities of it, and that is called the IMG gene, which is the IMG stands for increasing melanin gene. And so these animals, when they're born, they're relatively light in color, and with each shed they acquire more and more melanin pigment until as adults they can often be almost pure black. And it depends on what other genes that they're mixed with. When you cross it into a motley or an Anery, you get a really dark black boa. With the Hypo or the jungle, it doesn't quite get as black, but you can have some really beautiful patterns and beautiful effects. This is actually a Hypo IMG boa, and it might seem contradictory that you have both the Hypo reduced melanin and the increasing melanin gene. But when an animal has both of these genes, it's got a really beautiful effect. Just super high contrast between the dark and light areas. And this animal is about a year old, and you can see already all of the dark pigment that's developing. She's getting more and more dark pigment with each shed. Just a beautiful animal. Incidentally, this animal is also het for the call albino gene, and in the future I plan on producing some IMG sunglow boas. The IMG just really cleans up the albino gene, and the sunglows with IMG are really quite striking in terms of the color saturation and the contrast. So IMG is also known as Asabashi gene, which is Spanish for jet black. And it's a really cool boa gene that's recently become very popular, and there's a lot of potential to make combination morphs with the IMG gene. The locality boa with a similar thing going on as the IMG gene is the long-tailed boa, or boa constrictor longicauda, and these beautiful animals show a remarkable metamorphosis as they gain dark pigment as they get older. And so when they're born, they're relatively light in color, but with each shed they acquire more and more dark pigment. This animal is about 4 years old, nearing adulthood. You can see the beautiful dark markings. You can see she has very beautiful dark head markings. Overall, very high contrast between the dark blacks and the kind of mocha caramelly colors, as well as the white in the sides and on the belly. The longicauda are just, spectacular, breathtaking animals, and they're one of my favorite locality boas. And it's interesting to watch the transformation, and it definitely is similar to what we see going on in the IMG morph boas. The third boa morph gene with a locality-specific counterpart is the Anery gene. And the Anery gene stands for Anerythristic. Anerythristic animals lack the pigment erythrin, which is responsible for the red and orange and yellow pigments in a boa. So in the absence of the red and yellow, they have this beautiful silvery gray color. There's actually several different types of Anerythristic boa, and I don't have a non-locality common boa with anerythrism, but what this guy is, this is a very special boa. This is actually a locality-specific morph boa. This is an Anerythristic Paraguanera Peninisula Boa from Venezuela. These animals are a dwarf form from a peninsula in northwestern Venezuela, and there's actually an Anerythristic variant that this guy represents that's lacking the red and yellow pigment. So you can see he's got this beautiful silvery gray coloration. Just a beautiful boa, one of my favorites in the collection. Just really like this guy. He's definitely one of my top favorite boas, and he shows the beautiful silvery gray color that's seen in the best Anerythristic boa constrictors. A locality boa that's a naturally occurring Anerythristic boa is the Cay Boa from a small island off the coast of Belize. So these are a really cool dwarf boa. They've evolved to this small adult size with adults being in the 4 to 5 foot range, in response to the limited food resources on the island. And as you can see, they have this beautiful silvery gray Anerythristic appearance with this beautiful white creamy belly, and often they have a lot of striping like in his tail. They're not a true Anerythristic. As babies, they sometimes show a little bit of red pigment in the tail, but that tends to fade when they reach adulthood. And as you can see, this guy has this beautiful Anerythristic appearance. I really like these Cay Boas. They're definitely one of my favorite localities, and I really enjoy handling this guy in particular. He's a 7-year-old adult male, and he's really cool to take out. Even though he's just a little guy, inch for inch, he's every bit as powerful as one of the giant boas, even an anaconda. Another morph gene with a locality-specific counterpart is the jungle gene. And jungle is another gene that's very common, and it's been around for quite a while, but it's often confusing to people that don't know what the traits are associated with the jungle gene. So I actually did a video on jungle previously entitled The Enigmatic Jungle Boa. You might want to check it out for more information. But this is a beautiful jungle boa, and this shows some of the traits associated with it. So jungles have a very high color saturation. They also have very clean patterns. You can see a very clean back, dorsal surface, and an abrupt transition between the side coloration and the back coloration. You can see how well outlined the tail saddles are on this guy, and just how clean looking he is. The other main trait with jungle is the aberrancies of the saddles. You can see the saddles have this really cool funky shape to them. They often have kind of rounded points, and the little dashes in the middle of the saddles are often much larger. You can see these white dots. And this is a very beautiful looking jungle boa. He also has some striping. You can see the saddles on his neck are kind of connected. This guy actually isn't just jungle. This is a jungle Moran boa, and the Moran gene gives him this beautiful pastel coloration. But the jungle gene is responsible also for some of the color saturation, and as well as for the unique pattern. A locality boa where some of the animals resemble the jungle morph is the Pucallpa Peruvian true red-tailed boa, especially animals from the Rio Bravo bloodline, like this 5-year-old female. So these animals are just spectacularly beautiful. They have this gorgeous golden coloration. And then you can see the shape of the saddles, especially towards the tail, has this really cool jungly appearance. They're kind of broken down into this very geometrical looking shape. And then another thing that's cool about some of these Pucallpa Peruvians is they also show the clean back dorsal surface color, and the side color is a little bit different than the back color. It's not quite as abrupt as in a lot of the jungles, but it's a similar kind of effect. So I don't think that there's necessarily the same exact thing going on in a Pucallpa Peruvian boa as in a jungle boa, but it's just kind of neat that some of these wild occurring locality boas resemble in many ways some of the morph boas that people are selectively breeding in captivity. One final morph gene that has a locality boa counterpart is the sterling gene. And the sterling gene is a relatively new gene, and these animals have a patternless, uniform, golden brown appearance, sometimes with a little bit of pattern on the tail. And I actually don't have a sterling boa in my collection as much as I'd like one, but what I have is the naturally occurring locality boa counterpart, which is the Pearl Island Boa, boa constrictor saboge. So these animals, as you can see, often have a nearly patternless body, and they have that beautiful golden brown color. And then interestingly, like the sterling, they often do have some patterning on their tails. And not all saboge are completely patternless. Some of them do have some reduced saddles, but in general, they have the appearance of a more patternless boa that's similar to the sterling morph boa. So that was just a few examples of some morph boas that have a naturally occurring corresponding locality boa. I'm sure there's some other examples out there, so if you can think of some, that would be great if you would comment below for everyone to read. I just think it's really interesting that although we're selecting for all these mutant boas in captivity, nature appears to have already done it in many populations of locality boas, and which makes the biology of these animals just so fascinating. So I hope this video was helpful. As always, feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy your boas.